G'day cutie, time for another episode of No Context Theatre, where you need to know 3 names before I begin. Those 3 names are Joel Guy Jr., Grant Amato, Chandler Halderson. If you don't know who those people are, go look, find out, and then come back. It's very easy to find out who they are. And if you do know who they are, you'd be like, ooh, what are we talking about today? I think that I figured out a little bit what's going on inside those 3 people that is similar and led to similar murdery outcomes. And I want to share because I think all 3 of them are really, they stayed in the media, they're still in the media because they're all kind of perplexing to the vast majority of people, right? Like, have I had issues with my mother? Yes. Has there ever been an internal or external set of circumstances that could have led to her head in a stock pot? No. So, could I imagine lying to my family about something that I just don't want to share with them? Yes. Can I imagine a multi-year lie campaign that involves everyone in my life? And oh God, so much detail and so much elaborate. No. Can I imagine? Can I understand addiction, getting in over your head with someone that makes you feel seen and important and valid? Yes. Can I imagine spending more than $250,000 of my parents' retirement money on a Romanian can lady? No. All 3 of them are extreme and perplexing to a lot of us. And I think I was thinking about, who was it I was starting with? I think it was Chandler, because I was watching some of his interviews thing. And I was just like, who does this? Who murders their families so grotesquely? And I went, oh, well, Joel Guy Jr. did. And I'm like, yeah, these guys have a lot in common, don't they? And my brain decided to throw in Grant Amato, who, granted, did not do really squidgy things with his parents' corpses afterwards, but definitely treated his family and their bodies with a non-zero amount of contempt, right? Like, setting up the one human being in the world who loves you unabashedly and pretending that he shot your parents is a dick move, my guy. So my brain put those 3 people together, and I was just going, these guys. And I was like, okay, well, what do they have in common? Obviously, they murdered their parents and also one bonus brother. They were all living off their family, despite being old enough to the point where they didn't have to, and obviously capable of not having to. Did I do this episode so that I could call them the 3 loaders? No. Is it a bonus? Yes. They're all living off their family. They're all quite immature, emotionally speaking. Okay. Freeloaders who turn into murderers. Weird, but okay. But why? Is there a mechanism that joins these 3 other than just sort of bumping around in my head? Like, what's the thing that connects them? And I think I figured it out. The thing that connects them is they have kind of a doormat of a mother, a nice doormat, and kind of a strict disciplinarian father. And I let that one ping pong around in my head for a while. Because I was like, all right, well, what does it mean if you've got that? What does that do to you as a tiny person coming into the world with, again, I'm going to say this once and I'm just going to say it for all of this, because when I'm talking like this, it's easy to hyperbolize, and I don't need to, and I shouldn't, because all 3 of these parents had produced children earlier who seem to have turned out reasonably functional and normal, right? So we're not talking about super intense levels here of dysfunction. In all three cases, they're the youngest, so it's certainly possible that the parents cranked up the dysfunction a little bit more for their last one, and you've got that kind of rebound effect of all of the norms being sort of amplified by the older siblings. But we're not, like when I say that in all three cases the father's a disciplinarian, I don't mean he's hit them with a belt for 60 lashes and then lock them in a cupboard with the Bible for a week kind of disciplinarian. I just mean he's kind of harsh and his boundaries are rigid, you know? Maybe a little harsh. That's the sort of, if you bring him something, his first reaction is going to be, what? Instead of, what's that, sweetie? And when I say a parent who's a bit of a doormat, I mean getting a job just so your kid can stay in school and not have to work is pretty intense. But other than that, they were all functional women. Like they weren't and they were all functional women who had jobs that required them to give feedback to interact with other people and do stuff like that, right? Like one of them was doing payroll and stuff. I've seen people in payroll. Payroll is a job where you got to be tough occasionally. So they weren't doormats to the point of non-functionality. They were just people whose boundaries were porous, kind of minimal, right? Not adequate. Squishy boundaries. Squishy boundaries, rigid boundaries, right? Again, ignore me if I'm hyperbolizing. Take it down a couple of notches if you catch me, okay? So if you're being reared in a family with these two dynamics, which are being played out in the parents and also probably in your older siblings. Grant's middle brother is definitely doormatty. So you're getting these dynamics playing out. Whenever you do something neutral, right? Like you're in the bath, you're a tiny person in the bath and you go splishy splashy, splishy splashy. Doormat will be like, oh, that's lovely, darling. Isn't that wonderful? Aren't you? This is great. You know, like the best, you know, like so impressive, you know, like no, just, everything you do is great, you know, because you're mine and I love you. Everything's wonderful. I'm impressed by you all the time. And, you know, so the next day you're in the bath again, splishy splashy, but it's the other parent. And the other parent is like, what are you doing? You're making a mess. Stop that. Tiny brain in confusion. Is splishy splashy good or is splishy splashy bad? Yes. The answer is yes. The answer is both. Splishy splashy is good and bad simultaneously and that kind of nuance, that kind of Schrodinger-esque superposition of values is not a thing tiny brains can do. So tiny brain just goes, yes, it is good, it is bad. Both. And then when you do something that is good, you know, like, I don't know, you write the word cat. Obviously we're skipping ahead a bit here. But, you know, no boundaries parent is just going to be just effusive and just kind of a little bit extra maybe. You know, like a little bit just kind of like, oh, I'm so proud of you. What a great kid you are, la, la, la. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's not bad, you know, made a bit of a mess there. So we've got all of the squish, you know, like an uncomfortable, slightly toxic amount of sweetness and approval all the time, and very little approval, right? How on earth do you develop a moral sense in that environment where everything is good and nothing is good? Like when you do something legitimately bad, like take a cookie when you've been told not to take a cookie. You know, I'm sorry, I can't say cookie. I'm not American. When you take a bicky out of the bicky jar, you take a bicky, and you've been told not to take a bicky. Not until after dinner. You know, no boundaries parent will be like, oh, hungry. Okay, sweetie, it's all right. You can have the biscuit. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I love you. What is harsh boundaries parent, right, rigid boundaries parent will be like, I told you not to take the biscuit. No more biscuits for a week. Harsh disciplinarian sort of parent. And then have you learned that it's bad to take the biscuit? No, not really. I mean, harsh parent disapproves of fucking everything, so who cares? And no boundaries parent who is internally probably extremely uncomfortable with this situation because they don't want to lay down the basic thing of, no, sweetie, we said no biscuits. Put that back. Don't ever do that again, right? Which would be the good boundaries approach. The no boundaries or porous, squishy, not adequate boundaries parent is going to be extremely uncomfortable with that. And he's probably going to overcompensate by being extra squishy, lovey, and, oh, sweetie, sort of a fluttery, nervous kind of attention. And is that the recipe for narcissism? It sure is. Is that the recipe for a really tragic lack of empathy and insight? Yes. Because how can you tell? Your authentic experience is almost never mirrored to you accurately. So when you do something good, you don't get to just feel good, you get to feel good bad. And when you do something bad, you just get to feel good bad. And when you do something whatever, you just good bad. Like there's no, like, when you say that children need consistency, they don't just need consistency from the same parent every time. They need consistency across parents and across, like splishy splashy is neutral. Taking Bicky when you're not supposed to is bad. Riding cat is good. Like, you can't learn that stuff when it's good bad. Everything is good bad. So you have no internal, sincere, right down into you sort of sense of right and wrong. And you have no internal, sincere sense of yourself either. Because how can you? You're not getting any really good reflections of who you are. Both of the reflections are funhouse of distorted mirror reflections. And do I suddenly feel sympathy for these three? Yeah, a little bit. Shouldn't have done the murders. They don't get a pass on the murders, but oh man, that sounds like a brutal way to be raised. And again, it doesn't have to be super intense. It could just be across some things, or it could just be you're never entirely sure whether what you did was good or bad. Like, maybe, sometimes they both yell, and you're like, oh, that one's bad, but sometimes they don't. And very rarely they both go good, and then you're like, oh, that's good. That's a good thing. But, like, a lot of it's just confused and muddy and weird, and I don't know, like, so since you're getting, every time you do something good, you get good bad. And every time you do something neutral, you get good bad. And every time you do something bad, you get bad, but who cares? You get that one all the time. And a really kind of intense amount of, oh, I love you. So maybe bad starts sounding kind of tempting in those circumstances. Maybe there's a payoff there that, like you're going to get attention, you're going to get the warm, good feeling of kind of like, ooh. Because that's what you got every time you took the Bicky from the Bicky jar. Was a lot of attention, a lot of hugs and squishy cheek pinching from the very uncomfortable doormatty parent. Which, I mean, under those circumstances, does lying to everyone in your life for a couple of years start sounding a bit more feasible? Yeah. Because A, is good bad, who cares? And B, probably feels kind of a little fun in a way that is immature. Again, there's not a lot of maturity on any of these three. There's, a certain amount of just sort of like sticking it to these people that probably felt pretty good. And also just, why not? Who cares? Everything's good bad. Might as well just play Tarkov. Who cares? And I mean, is that Joel Guy Jr. as well? Yeah. With even more intense hermity escapism. Because Chandler somehow had a nice girlfriend. Kat, you're not watching this, but even if you were, none of this was your fault. He had a lovely girlfriend who read all of his intentions positively. It's a little naive, but I mean, I can forgive naivety in a 20-year-old. But yeah, I mean, you might as well, like with Joel, you've just got a slightly more intense version in terms of hermitiness and escapism, right? Because who cares? Everything's good bad. Might as well play video games and live with my roommate that likes me. He's the only person that seems to genuinely like me, that isn't kind of forced to spend time with me, which I will avoid doing at all costs, because I'm not getting anything out of the time I spend with my family, apparently, if you're Joel, which is sad. I don't agree with any of these murders. I think all of these murders were heinous and awful, and all of these parents were in many ways pleasant people I would have enjoyed being neighbors with, and were doing their best, but whew. And you've gotten, like, he would hide in his room instead of spending time with that family. And I mean, that level of aversion, not even just hanging out and just being kind of picking your nails and saying whatever, but literally avoiding it as much as humanly possible. Coming home for Christmas and then spending Christmas in your room. That says things. And I mean, Grand Amato being the... quite a strict dad, I think, in that case, sounded like. I mean, I can't know that for sure. What you mostly see about him is what he did after he found out that Grant cleaned out his savings. So, you know, like, would I be a little harsh under the... Yes. So I can't judge him as being super harsh, but again, none of these three seemed to be, I don't think any of them were happy. I think they just sort of found a comfortable sort of place, you know, where they'd found something that worked for them. I think Joel had these visions, these complete visions he was doing very little to realize, but he was still in uni, and so that probably kept the vision alive of becoming Dr. Joel. Plastic surgeon, rich, respected, walked away from his family, but just because he was much better than them. You know, like this, again, quite grandiose vision of who he was, and his parents pulled the plug on that vision. I think it's less kind of like, oh, I have to get a job, you know, like everyone's just like, you just didn't want to get a job. Yeah, I don't think that leads you to murder people generally. I think crushing someone's vision of themselves is more likely to lead to murder. And Dr. Joel was way too good to have to go and get a job at McDonald's. Way too important and brilliant. That's right, I don't have friends. I don't need friends. I'm too smart. They don't understand. I'm Dr. Joel. And inside my head, I can sound this cool. Outside of my head, I will never sound this cool. If you say you've got to go get a job, Joel, you and your exquisitely blank resume have to go and get a job. And you know that the only kind of job you're going to get is sweeping a floor or a fry cook or whatever. Something that you not very deep, because you're very grandiose. But like in your heart, you are too good for that. And they are trying to ruin you. They are trying to hurt you by making you go and do something as beneath you as becoming a janitor or a fry cooker or whatever. That leads to rage, which I will get to, because I think there's a shit ton of rage under all of them, and it was kind of perplexing. But I think I've maybe got a handle on that as well. And if you're Grant and you found this woman who makes you feel seen and important and allows you to live this fantasy life where you're a famous Twitch streamer with an extremely fancy car and all of these cool things, and everybody looks up to you. I'm doing the hair flick. He didn't have enough hair to do the hair flick, and neither do I. But you know, like you're admired, you're cool, you're sexy, you're important. You're like, it's very grandiose again, isn't it? Yes. You're all of these things in this wonderful world. It's not just the nice Romanian lady. It's the life that he had created in that community, where that was who he was. Again, we have Dr. Joel, we have streamer Grant, we have Grant with his, was it BMW? BMW Grant. Might be a Mercedes-Benz. I don't remember and I don't care. But you know, like fancy Grant. Fancy, powerful, cool Grant. Instead of actual Grant, who's minimally functional, not doing well in any areas of his life, living with his parents again, not because that's fun, but because he got busted stealing drugs from the hospital. You know, like the fantasy is a big part for all three of these people. And that suggests that normal everyday life for them is not tolerable. So, and it's not tolerable because how on earth do you treasure anything? How on earth do you find value in everything when fucking everything is good bad, right? Everything's good bad. You might as well play video games. Sorry about that, pressing a bit. So, Chandler, living in a fantasy world where he is getting a job at Tesla, he's done all of this study, he's got a nice girlfriend, she is not imaginary, but she's also just like really proud of him. She, you know, like, and he's doing the dive team, volunteering, and the blah, 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 you know, like fantasy world where he is the best, super grandiose again, just on a slightly more modest scale. Isn't that fun? Like, we've got two who have got really grandiose ones, and Chandler's is just kind of a little bit, I suppose. I have a job that's coming at SpaceX based on the certificate I got at community college. Is a little grandiose, but still, like, I'm working on the dive team and I work in an insurance agency. It's not the big play, if you ask me. But yeah, like in all of these cases, we have grandiosity, we have no real internal sense of values, right? Not just a moral compass, but also what is life? What you know, like, how do you even really determine, other than the base primal pleasures of dopamine video game, click, 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 and sex, which two of the three of them, maybe all three of them, if the roommate thing, maybe. I don't know, it's possible. I find that fascinating. Whether or not they were romantically or sexually involved, Joel and his roommate, the most enmeshed relationship, clearly. Like, whew, how do you get enmeshed with a hermit? I don't know. Michael did it somehow. Sidetrack. So, it's grandiose vision of who they are. And in all three cases, the reality just gets yanked out from under them by the parents who have, in their minds, I suspect, failed them their entire lives. And just either been disapproving all the time, which is bad, or approving all the time, which is worse. Like, So the parents are popping the bubble. You will never see the Romanian lady again. I don't remember if she's actually Romanian. I think she is. Please forgive me if you're not. Ma'am, I hold you blameless. You clearly do great work. You know, like, you're never seeing her again, ever. Again, there goes that fantasy world, that entire fantasy world. I'm taking you down to the school so that we can talk about your grades. Entire fantasy life. You know, Chandler's beautiful visions of himself as the coolest and the guy with the job at SpaceX and the terrible disability. And tiny side note, really pissed about the faking the disability thing. I'll rant on that another time if you want me to. James Summerton did it too, and I hated it even worse when he did it. Anyway, he wasn't faking a disability, he was using his disability. Both are bad. And so Chandler's fantasy, you know, like grandiose internal fantasies just being destroyed by meeting with the nice man from school admin. And Joel's internal fantasy life, Dr. Joel. I'm totally going to be a plastic surgeon someday. The details to be determined. That gets yanked because he has to now go be Joel the Fry Guy. And what we get is rage, I guess. I mean, right? A lot of rage. A lot of presumably rage that's been built up over years and years and years and years and years of boundary violations. I think the worst boundary violations come from the doormat parent, because the harsh one, you know, like, they have boundaries you can bounce off, and they are kind of very rigid, very unyielding, but you won't connect with them particularly well. But the worst, you know, like, you won't connect with them very well, but it's really hard to hate someone who you can't get through to. The poorest, squishy, non-existent-y boundaries. This is where serial killers come from. A lot of the time. One harsh, unyielding parent, one parent with shit boundaries. And you have people who end up with so much rage to the person with the shit boundaries, not the harsh, unyielding one. You end up with serial killers who hate all women because women are represent their mother with no boundaries. And it played out that way over and over during the traditional gender role times. We'll probably see some fun new permutations of that as the gender roles hopefully get better, but maybe we'll also just see parents who have decent boundaries, and then this won't happen at all. That would be nice. But there we are. Like, do all of those pieces fit? I think so. We have three people with one parent with slightly too porous boundaries and one parent with slightly too rigid boundaries. Immature people with grandiose and quite intense internal fantasy lives. Parents who yank the cord on that at a vulnerable kind of like idea of who they are and who they will be and how great they are. Followed by murder and contempt, treating these bodies with very serious contempt. And yes, I include Grant in that, because that was a lot of contempt. And that all comes from rage, which is what you get when you don't raise your kids correctly, apparently. So, do I feel sad? Do I feel sorry for these guys? Yeah, a little bit. Still did some terrible murders though, and you're never going to get me past the head in the crock pot, I gotta tell you. So, the one in the fireplace. One's in the fireplace. Ugh. Hope that was useful and interesting, and trying to bring it in under half an hour, just managing it, yay me. Let me know if you have thoughts. I really would love to hear your thoughts, because I'm sure they're great. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your others, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.